So here we are. This is the second P2P talk from itsef. itsef, for who doesn't know, is a meta-organic effort, open initiative. It doesn't have organizational body, you see. You don't have any lines of control and command, and people are open and freely invited to kick on, to share it, to sync to it. And it's not a thing. It's a interactive and conviviality phenomenon. And this is something that I personally explore about 20 years of my life. And it's something that I thought that was going to be impossible to happen in my lifetime. And to be very honest with you guys. Why did I thought that was going to be very difficult, and because you see, historically speaking, we raise ourselves as a species, a part of ourselves, with language, with territories, and with one type of social technology that doesn't give the common man, the common fellow, the potential that he has to interactively do what he wants with the other. Because it always had a lord. It has always had hierarchies. And hierarchies, lords, and systems. This thing we call systems. And systems is a way to control things. So I had a thought about nearly 18 to 20 years ago. Would it be possible to have some type of organizational tier, a framework, but that is not organizational? It's not an NGO, it's not a startup, it's not a company, it's not something that you have necessary chains of command. You have necessary one thing defined it. You see, one thing, one identity, one mission. You don't have this thing about mission is very military, isn't it? You don't have a mission state. You don't have nothing to say, this is it, and this is the place that we want to go. No. The thing that I was thinking about 20 years ago is, would it happen someday to be possible that people gather together through empathy, gather together through not a common cause, but a sort of causes that have something in common? You see, is something in common is the singularity thing, is the singular way that how you, Jan, how you, Colin, how you, John, how you, Marco is from Green Fab Lab here. Yes, how you guys view this common thing. Yeah, Marco, pleasure to see you. Well, not to see you, but to hear you. Very pleasure.
Sorry, I have no video, but I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, man.
Please continue.
Okay. So in this sense, all my explorations that I have been doing for 2 decades almost is to try to understand if this fluid, organic tier, empathy tier, is something that is enough sustainable, how we say autopoetic sustainable, to make things happen in this material world that we live in. So this is something that it had a lot of faces, a lot of types of explorations, you see, and the incarnations, as if you want to call it this way. And the last one is this global experimental station for open sciences and peer-to-peer social technologies. that we call here in Brazil itsef, you see. And it's something that no one really understands, you see. It's very interesting because it still happens. We start this thing in 2014. And I started with a bunch of people that eventually the people are here and are not here, because you see, there is this thing about complexity and not systems complexity itself. Sometimes you're in sync, sometimes you're not. So it doesn't happen to it doesn't have to be the same people always. Oh, you see, there's no founders. You see, there's no founders for this thing that we call itsef. There are the people that initialize it, that started with it. There's a starting point, but everyone is invited to connect with its own singularity, with own view, but open, very radical, open to hear hear the others, to have some type of conviviality with others. And well, and the last thing I'm going to say, because this meeting, this P2P talk with John, it's a pleasure, John, to see you. Really a pleasure, man. And it is to say that I understand that we are witnessing and making it happen a worldwide phenomenon that I call the global age. I understand it as a global age. Why global age? Because we as species have about 10,000, 9,000, 8,000, 7,000 years of local ways of being with ourselves, local. We have about 500 years of global ways of trading goods and making widespread economics through countries, planet-wise. And now we have the opportunity as peers, as people, as common people, to build up, imagine new social environments, new social worlds. And I call this in global paradigm. So I understand that all we are witnessing is because we gain in such level of interconnectivity, in such level of interactivity, that we're allowing ourselves to, for the first time in our species, to recognize ourselves as humans. You see, the diversity of what is to be a human being. So I think that this is a new type of intelligence, really. It's a new type of intelligence that doesn't speak only with rationality or spirituality or intuitivity, intuition, or things like that. We're witnessing a new type of human intelligence that is holistic, it's complex, it's new. It's not something that is related to the actual civilizational status quo that we live in. It's something really, really new. So in this sense, all this open initiative called Wise Playgrounds, it really resonates not only with me, but a lot of other peers and nodes in this itsef thing that I'm talking with you guys. So we're here today to get to know better John Kellden, and of course all you guys here, and to better understand and better synchronize the Wise Playgrounds. Let's play. Let's play, John. It's with you now, man.
I mean, thanks for this lovely intro, and it's a pleasure to meet you all. And I made copious notes, and I see if I can sort of curate this. So for those who can't join this in whatever form and can't find time to sort of go through the whole recording, they should, but if they can't, there will be some notes in the post and in the chat and so on, right? So that takes care of some of the practicality. And please just agree, disagree, further annotate, tweak, read further on, right? Because that's kind of the general idea. Because the wise playground is first and foremost play, right? And then ground is, there's three things with ground. Let me kind of just be kind of like Swedish and organized for a short while. So the three building blocks, that's chat, because ease of access, everyone sort of gets started to join the chat. You click on a link and there you are, right? The second building block is the knowledge repository. That I actually have to thank. There's been, on average, 400 people chiming in daily in the conversation community for 4 years. So 400 people times 4 years daily, that's kind of an actual truckload of good stuff people have shared in, which means that still lucky, right? Because Facebook is kind of Facebook, and I hacked this inside Facebook because that's where people believe they are. We aren't, but they believe so, so I had to go there, right? So I hacked it into there. And in August last year, it started working. And what started working? Well, the Douglas Engelbart idea I had, right? With sort of the digital dynamic knowledge repository, which means don't listen to a single word I'm saying, just go there and search. And then you can just add your stuff, questions, comments, responses, annotations, further riffs, in whatever search terms you used and whatever people and stuff. Because that was Doug Engelbart's brilliant idea already 50 years ago, 55 years ago actually, to a dynamic digital knowledge repository is stuff and people, right? I had this stuff. I've been reading 1 gazillion books throughout all my life, right? So it's kind of ridiculous. We shouldn't go there, right? No, we should just do that async, right? We could do books. But the people thing is different, right? Because you can't really just tell people that thou shalt gather here, right? Exactly as Vinicius said, right? It has to be fluid. It has to be self-organizing. We need to gather together for empathy. And it's not organizational in the traditional sense, right? Cat herding is another name for it, right? But what if we design ways to combine, that leads me to the third thing, right? I said chat and I said knowledge repository. So we have those, right? Existing stuff. The cards, what I mean with cards, is how you allow the machine to be of service to us. As it is currently, we are kind of loyal minions and coerced minions, the reactive, angry minions to the Mark Zuckerberg Facebook machine, right? Which is kind of weird. If I see there's comments in the conversation community, and by the way, thanks for each and every one of the comments throughout the 4 years, there's 3 times as many like button clicks. And I'm not sure about you guys, but I have difficulty parsing someone clicking, right? What did that person say? With some of you, I get it, right? Because I know some of you, I have rich context, I'm meeting you, and I see that, he clicked on things. I can assume he liked it, right? But what is he saying, feeling, thinking, relating? I don't know, because he just clicked the like button, right? But what does happen, and that I know, and there's numbers and dollars to prove it. If you click the like button, Mark Zuckerberg will get richer. And we will get squat, right? So you like Mark Zuckerberg 3 times more than you like me. So I have the data to prove that, right? So that's kind of weird, right? Yeah. So, but we shouldn't sort of diss each other, right? It's not that. It's just that we just need to remember that we got effed up badly by 12 years of doing Facebook, and now it's time to move on to something else. So this is where Vinicius and me and loads of other people are trying to build things, right? With new organizing forms, new ways to accessing this intelligence. Tell you what, we can skip all my sort of nice things I was going to say, because the new type of intelligence is where it's at. That's the thing. We can sort of just forget everything else. Then we need to help each other. That's where the platform comes in, right? So we don't need to go it alone, and we'll help each other turn this intelligence, obviously old existing intelligence as well, right, into ability. So if we sort of focus on just one process, how to help each other turn intelligence into ability. And the rest we'll just figure out through clever friends, right? They can do distributed governance or decentralized governance or peer-to-peer governance or whatnot governance of any kind of shape or form that serves what we want to do, right? I obviously have a ridiculously large pattern language, which I sort of, it's how I govern the conversation community and how I intend to sort of govern the WISE playground, if that's what it's going to be called. And have sort of very definite goals, like scaling to 300,000 people. Why 300,000? Because at 300,000 people, none of us will need to work ourselves to death. We do know that we are pioneers and we like to work, but we shouldn't, right? We should just like put in 2 hours each week, and the rest is the platform and network effects and avatars and bots and stuff, right? We're doing all the grueling kind of routine work because that's what bots can do if we program to do that, right? And at 300,000, the internal currency, the crypto, right, the tokens, works really well because it's large enough, right? You have kind of like an internal market. This means that we can sort of play well, because when I meet old stogie guys, traditional guys with money here in Sweden and elsewhere, I use metaphors they understand, right? If I say, we're going to build an insight market, then I'm kind of deliberately using older language and say, whoa, that is interesting, right? That will help me to bring in investors. If I would say, this is self-organizing multi-holonic holacracy, right? That's actually closer to what we're going to build, but they wouldn't understand a thing, right? And they would just say, yeah, please, and here's the door. Bye-bye, we'll never see you again, right? We call you, right? So how you use language matters. But even more than the language is how language as a social tech supports our intelligence, our individual intelligence, our collaborative intelligence, our augmenting intelligence, I mean, man-machine, human-machine, right? And there's one challenge we need to overcome when we scale things. I mean, initially, we need to tell all the others who are kind of utopian and green and permaculture, because they don't code, right? And if I say we're going to scale this at blockchain speed, they kind of think, oh, John is now suddenly turned the devil because he's speaking weird scaling industrial machine things, right? He sounds metallic. No, it's not that, right? We need to sort of make clear that just because you're a coder doesn't mean you're a bad person, right? That's not true, right? It's just that for the permaculture, green, women, older people, they have fears, right? Because what they're seeing Facebook did was kind of, they scaled it to 1 billion people and they just shafted everyone, right? Grand theft data, right? They stole everything, our data. We don't have access to it, right? And they're making billions and we get zipped, right? So obviously there's some fears, some anxieties, right? But if we build this, probably the most important thing is how do we get to 15, 50, 150, 500 people? And that's why I did this kind of a couple of years ago. I wanted to figure out how do you do that, right? So I did. So now there's, I can sort of close now with sort of the actual data. There's 4,100 members in the conversation committee. On a rolling 2-month basis, there's 2,700 active. And it's not because of the John Kellden freak show. I mean, I'm interesting, but I'm not that interesting, right? No, it's us, right? There's some kind of thing happening in this place, this digital place. And what is even better, because we want to scale it, we want to make things happen, right? At each day, there's around 700 people chiming in.
Yes,
now, we need to help them, because what they are doing now is they're kind of primed. We need to forgive them because they've been doing Facebook for 12 years. So the first thing it's in their mind when they go to the conversation community is to click the like button. And then they think, that's it, right? I'm done here, right? I've been engaging in conversation. It's just that no one else can read the like button, what it actually means. But there's around at least 100 comments every day, right? So there's enough people there. So we already have kind of critical mass to start, which is an important thing. And then the rest will, I don't know, do some dopamine detox, just to get them out of the evil machine and sort of.
You see,
Yeah. So I mean, at least that's the data. So you know that there's kind of just not sort of loose ideas. There's this stuff going to happen. Right?
you see, John, there's something very interesting that you're talking about. That is the conditioning behind language and culture. It's something that relates to something, two dimensions of the human condition that talks, has a conversation in between. And this effort that it's been called Wise Playgrounds, is very interesting in this perspective. You see, we're trying to tickling these things that normally in a daily life, we don't do it. We don't do it. We just go with the river. We just go with the flow of things. The flow of things that are in a very particular individual way, in a very self-constrained way. We usually don't have good time to think the things in the big scale, the things at all, because we think that the big scale things is with governments, with corporations, with institutions. They have the power to do that. But it's institutions that has the power to do, not the people. So there's a big, huge problem. Of course not. We made these institutions. So if we made it as a people, as species institutions, we can create other institutions or non-institutions. We can make it in other ways, in other very innovative or very disruptive ways. We don't need to reproduce the logic of the existing institutions that already exists. So I see this effort of the Wise Playgrounds, something that is challenging. It's trying, not challenging, but it's trying to re-signify the way that we do things. The way that we do things through understanding that everyone here has a cultural bias, a language bias, and that for itself is a huge challenge.
Yeah, it is a challenge. Actually, I was going to sort of see if I can get the mic to Johnny, if you're up for it.
Yeah.
There's a kind of operationalizing thing to do with things like ownership, having an alternative to just go to institutions and markets and governments. There's security, safety, but particularly how we can level up in terms of digital identity. And this all comes together, we hope, as we actually, at least what we're building, in something called a DAO. And for those who doesn't know, DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. So it sort of hooks into most everything you outlined so far. And Johnny, if you...
Yeah, so I'm Johnny Dabowski. I'm a generative artist, musician, computer scientist, cyberneticist. I work across a lot of different fields. I've been in the blockchain space since 2013, or invested in the Ethereum ICO, and have worked for like 10 different projects. And really, I've been after the same thing in all of my work, pre and post blockchain, which is scaling coordination. You know, I mainly deal with environmental and health systems, but how do we cooperate at large scales? It's been a challenge I've been working to figure out. And coming together with John, I found the right community to really experiment and test things. And what we've realized is identity, like self-sovereign identity, the ability to have your own identity that stands apart from all these platforms, is vital. And also, you mentioned, you know, our cultural biases and various biases, our ability to make explicit what we want, what we think we want, our concerns, our risks. How do we embed our, you know, our true identity, and then get together and collaborate and honor our individual concerns, but also pool together as a larger community? So we've actually been researching a few, you know, technical ways to achieve this. We won't get too far into them, but there's something called Shapley value, which is like a game theory model for how do you represent a bunch of contributions when you have a collective. How do you reward individual contributions that increase the value of the whole? And that's something that we've been working for our DAO, because the thing about blockchain is it doesn't decentralize power unless you want it to and you design it to. So a lot of the DAOs that have been the early experiments have fallen short in a few pretty powerful ways, not because they weren't done by amazing, awesome people and they're well thought out, but this is hard work. And so figuring out how we ensure that identity is maintained and that we can collaborate and sort of optimize our flow of resources, that's been a big focus that we've been working on with the Wise Playground.
I can actually, and big thanks, Johnny, because this is helping me formulate a couple of things even more, right? You can actually go and research game theory and collaborative intelligence game theory and just sort of make up your mind kind of what's that, right? And then Shapley values is a way to make sure that everyone's contributions is kind of computed. So there's no kind of big boss that tells you this, you should get erased, you should get promoted, you should get demoted, you should get fired or whatever, right? Because it's kind of us figuring this out. It's in real time, right? And the only way we can scale it is to have machines doing it for us. So you can go back to what I said with the 3 building blocks. Chat, we don't need to argue about anymore. Knowledge repositories we can build, that's kind of known. In between, we have to wait to figure out what goes on in the human thing, aka chat, and what goes inside the machine, crunching all our nice, sweet, co-creational knowledge and data, how to sort of move back and forth, right? So then you can actually think of a card. Imagine a card. On the front, you have the card says the human parsable side. You get win-win, right? So if you play a card in the chat, it can be an actual card or a method card or a comment or a response or a post, something, right? Or just chat, text. You bring something in, right? You add value. You have a thought, you get it in there, and suddenly things happen and people join you and good things happen, right? It co-creates value. The human parsable side is one part of the card, right? One side of the card, right? Win-win, right? You can sort of easily imagine that if you go win-lose, yeah, sure, you can gain, but at someone else's cost, right? And then we should have governance and incentives to make sure that we do less of that and more of the win-win, right? So play the win-win card rather than win-lose, right? On the back side of the card, you basically have game theory and Shapley values, because then the machine can figure out if you're doing win-win. And the machine can, the more you do win-win, or if you're really bold and adventurous and want to do really cool stuff, you go win-win-win, right? So you have in mind your narrativity. So it's not just me and John is doing nice things together. We're making sure that some of that will spill out into 300,000 others, right? So this is a win-win-win. And then with Shapley values, the machine, the sees all, knows all, understands all, and parses all at sort of lightning blockchain speed, will reward us even more because we're cool guys and doing even better. And so on and so forth. Right? So this kind of, this is obviously enormously simplified. It's kind of much more complicated with this. But now you at least have some kind of beginning imagination that human machine can actually sort of work really well together. And we can sort of program it to do so with these building blocks. Yeah.
To anchor it with one additional piece of context, Shapley values is an algebra that gets expressed by some computational system. The computational systems we're working with include things like network operads and process calculus and some of the pi calculus work that Greg and Archain have been doing, and like looking at business process modeling, looking at the identity and the expressions of people that come together and say, this is what I want, this is what you want, here's my risks and constraints, here's your risks and constraints. Being able to feed those into a computational system that can help us optimize the flow of resources. We've been looking to some of the systems that like the military uses for complex mission structuring and like search and rescue and things where you have like loads of different networks that you need to plug in together. And you can't be worried about, shoot, I plugged these two groups together and the plug is a little wonky. The message passing is something's being lost. They think they're helping each other, but really they're doubling each other's efforts. So we've been feeding all of this into some, pretty well-tested resource flow systems that really put, and that's supposedly what Facebook and Google, do with our data is they use that to give us contextual information. But the difference is we prioritize the individual and their concerns above any business, property, like serving you good ads.
Johnny, are you working with the people of DAO-Stack?
Not formally, but we're hoping to be very soon. We're submitting some grants. We have this meta grant program where we're doing a month-long research and field testing project at NYU ITP in New York City. And we're going to submit some grants to like 10 different blockchain projects. I love DAO-Stack. I think they've got so much right, and their toolkit is really exceptional.
Yeah, they are already in the alpha phase, and you can, in their generative DAO, they call it generative DAO. You can put a project there to already being evaluated for a lot of nodes, a lot of people. You see, I have a lot of friends there too, so that's why.
Well, we'll definitely feed with you to present that and get you up to speed on some of the bigger plans. But yeah, they're great, and poking these things is hard. See, one of our other goals is, in order, there have been DAOs that have said, look, we've seen the error of our ways. We figured out a better way to democratize the DAO. And all you have to do is X, Y, and Z. And X, Y, and Z might democratize decision-making across a group of super technically advanced people. But for somebody who doesn't know how to use MetaMask, it's no more democratic that they adjusted some algorithm or some staking or staking. So we're really working to try and make these things more accessible to totally non-technical people.
You see, Johnny, that's the thing. That's the thing about blockchain in a broader sense. You see, that's when I some time ago. I step on Arthur Brock holochain. Of course, you know it.
Yes.
And it's a very, very intriguing, very. It's a new internet. It's a new type of internet because it doesn't run in this corporate servers, the Amazon and Google and things like that. And I'm trying to imagine that in some place in the future, or really by now, some conversation can already be going with the holochain business, isn't it?
Yeah, I invested in their ICO and bought 3 of their holo nodes, which I'm expecting any day now. It looks like they're about to ship. And we love Arthur's work and Gene Russell's work, and hope to also partner with them and their use of value flows as a financial ontology and schema. It really fits into what we're trying to do, where if biomimicry,
and it's biomimicry oriented.
Yeah. And if you have agreement on what we mean when we call someone a person, and what we mean when we talk about money, and we get really specific with the terminology, if we have 20 organizations who all agree to use like the value flows ontology, then we can do cross-organizational collaboration. And using Shapley value, if you help us on one project and it's valuable to another project, because we know that we have the same accounting kind of language, it makes it a lot easier to collaborate and to kind of pool the resources of a lot of different organizations.
I mean, there's the short way how we could resolve this. And mind you, that we would be really happy that we do our 300,000 people thing. Holochain does their own 300,000 people thing. Stellar does actually Stellar is kind of probably need to do the 300 million people thing, right? So that's kind of a different ball game they're playing, because they want to end up being the money, right? But we're going to partner with Holochain, with Stellar, with DAOstack, with whoever wants to build these new things, right? Because that's the important thing, that we cooperate sort of at all levels and at all scales. And it really goes all the way back to how these machines, whether we call them code or DAO or blockchain or something, right? How these techs kind of interfaces, and Johnny could probably go on for a couple of hours and just really enlighten you about how you can do multi-ontology sense making at sort of, that both coordinates and scales. Just that's probably for another in the near future, where we really go down into brass tacks, because the nice thing with ontologies is that it just sounds like a scary word, but it isn't, right? It's just kind of just a way to think about ontologies and schemas. So what we then code in terms of interfaces and chat and cards and whatnot actually works. And some of that is even better, it becomes interoperable. We are fully compliant with GDPR, if that is a thing, and so on and so forth. We just sort of, all the stuff that needs to be taken care of are going to be taken care of. And even though those are sort of will be kind of really boring details for kind of like 99% of all our members, it's still good, right? Because if the existing platforms actually solve this to the tune of 1 billion people, so could we, right? It's doable, right? But the ontology is also tricky to sort of allow for, so you don't end up with, oh, damn, we need to redo the whole thing, right? Because there's kind of an element of time here as well. I mean, who knows? Let's put a scenario in. 2 years from now, everyone is sick and tired of Facebook, and that is actually leaving. We don't know, but it could happen, right? Then we have to be there and sort of bring people on board, right? They're leaving the old bus, and we need to open the bus door to the new bus because we're going to go different places, right? And the bus will not sort of hold together without ontology. That's kind of the long and short of it.
And you know, something amazing that John brought to life is, you know, when I joined the conversation community, pretty quickly thereafter, I saw that there were these different Zoom breakout rooms. There were about like 10 or 15 of them. And I found my way to one that Colin is a member of, called Practical Knowledge Ecology. I have a nonprofit called Sense Collective. I work on a healthcare, skincare company called Cure Persona. All these different groups have a home where they can go and form pods. And so like our Practical Knowledge Ecology pod is the first pod to actually test, you know, bootstrapping collective funds to sponsor some work. So we're working on the NYU ITP project, and it's a project that's going to benefit the whole. It's going to benefit the entire conversation community. It's work that's going to benefit this skincare, you know, Reddit clone called Cure Persona. There's like 4 or 5 ways that the same work can benefit 5 or 10 stakeholders. But how the heck do you organize the reward structure when you have like a group of people whose work is beneficial to separate groups? And that's what we've been working closely with John and across these different groups. And it's not as hard as it sounds, as long as you have a common language and as long as you have a ledger that the different groups agree on. Okay, we're all going to honor the work of this group, and we're all going to reward it in our own ways. They don't have to reward it the same, so long as there's clear communication and coordination between the different pods. And that is, I think, the most fundamental limit of coordination right now, where you have 2,000 nonprofits working on the same problem, but because of the limits of trust and their experience of, like, you know, it's a lot of work to form trust between organizations. And often it's more work than it's worth up front, because there aren't these, you know, sort of automated ways of doing it. So that's another really grinding motivation for what we're working on, is to solve this limit of cooperation.
Yeah, what you bring up now, Jon, is very important, because let's go back to chat, right? Because we have the chat with 170 people. And I started that because people told me, Jon, you can't do a chat with 170 people. It can't be done, right? So I did, right? And then I showed people that, yeah, you can do that. We need to sort of go beyond sort of what is known, right? What people are kind of accepting and sort of belittling themselves. We can, right? But in the programmable chat, which will be kind of what most people will see and use in this Wise Playground thing, then you can go, just kind of like a slider, you can go full curmudgeon. You know what a curmudgeon is? So out of 300,000 people, you only see you, right? There's no one else, right? Because you shut out everyone else, right? Because that's your space, right? You can just do that, right? Or you could go just wild, right? And have access to a chat where there's 300,000 people. I probably wouldn't advise that for the beginner, right? To have 300,000 people just hitting you at once, right? But somewhere in between one, which is kind of boring because it's just you, right? You can have a chat with yourself, right? Obviously, that's kind of Evernote. So that's kind of obviously cool. Or Google Keep, right? Just one, just you, it's kind of fine, right? 300,000, not to begin with, right? But somewhere in between, like 5, if you want to do a project, 5 is fine, right? Great, right? 15, yeah, fine. You and your team and a couple of clients and some stakeholders and partners, great, right? 50, yeah, fine, like network of practice. 150, yeah, Dunbar, right? So it depends, right? It depends on what you're doing. Now, the machine, the programmable chat underneath the ontology, once you start chatting and the machine learns what makes you tick, right? Depending on what you're doing. So then it shrinks and expands in service to your needs, right? That is kind of the main thing why I did this weird 170 people strong chat. I wanted to figure out, how does it feel like? Is everyone just going crazy? No, it actually, we can get it to work. But
John is
you need to realize it's a hack in the inside Facebook chat, so it doesn't really work the way we want it to. But I've sort of proven that we can get it to work, right? That's the main thing, right? But the rest is kind of obviously that we do things that works really well, right?
Yes, it's a very interesting hack, by the way. Very interesting hack, in very senses. But I want to welcome Tina. Hi, Tina. Welcome. Yeah, I didn't welcome Johnny too. I like always to welcome people. We didn't have that opportunity. But you see, there's a thing that technology or algorithms and machine learning and things like that can solve complex things in scaling up, as we see that is already happening with Facebook. But not in the sense to give us power, in the sense to take of us power, all types of power. But the thing for me is we all have cultural and language biases. So is it an existing preconditioning in ourselves to respond where we respond to ourselves daily, on daily basis? See, what I'm saying is the type of way that you have a conversation with another person or a monologue with another person is it's rooted by the way that you think the things, your vision of the world, your culture, your languages, and all these restrictions. Let's put it this way. So this is a question for us to try to understand between ourselves. How do we deal with these conditions? You see, because the algorithm can only read what you're searching, with whom you're chatting, right? He cannot read. He doesn't have machine learning nowadays. Doesn't have a context to know what are you speaking about. You see, to have some critical thinking about it. So he only can do the job in the surface, really in the surface. The surface he is interacting with John, but it's interacting with Colin too. Well, so the machine learning thing can say, well, he has, I don't know exactly what Colin and John is about, but I know that this guy called Vinicius, he's talking with them. He's having some type of interaction with these guys, really, in the chat and all the groups or the worldwide group or things like that. So the point of departure of the algorithm is the point of departure of my biases. You see, so in this sense, I can still end up in a bubble. I can still end up in a bubble as we end up in a bubble in Facebook, and a lot of bubbles. So the question is how to manage this. How can we make it? Because you see, so only to finish, my way of seeing things is the only way that we have to make a detox, a type of detox of our conditionings, is trying to interact with diversity thinking, is trying to have a conviviality flux of people that doesn't resonate with you at all, and you don't understand them. They are strangers. So you can really enlarge your empathy, your empathy campus. You see, because that's why this effort where we call itsef, this local experimental station for open science and B2B social technology exists. Because how do we detox our conditionings? You see, if the starting point, of what we're talking here is with art conditionings. That's what I have to say.
No, I think I'm sharing a link in the chat here. You know, we try not to reinvent the wheel wherever possible. So a friend, Daniel Estrada, has this great thing called Polytopolis, which is about, it's adjacent to your question, but it's trying to answer how do we enter into cooperation and signal or make explicit what our values are when we form a group. And then how do we as a group kind of help each other to sit between like threshold of being poorly optimized towards those values and being like supercharged. So like if we make a cat lovers group, you know, the 7 of us, and through my actions, I have like a notification, like we all together say, here's what the best values would be for the ultimate cat lover. And then, you know, privately, my own chatbot can let me know based on, you know, what I feed it, how I'm stacking up. Am I, you know, and it will give me little recommendations. Hey, you know, you haven't taken your cat for a walk to the candy store today. And I get to proudly display my badge that is a representation of our shared values about what being a cat lover is. Now, if it later comes out that I was abusive to my cat, I get kicked out of the group and I lose my right to brandish this badge that is a badge of our representative shared values. So this is sort of just adjacent to that. How do we come together? And this speaks to how we kind of recognize what our biases are, because I think it's a lot harder to do on your own. So when you enter into cooperation and you can start with some small examples, we get a sense of what it will be like to help each other unpack those biases and overcome them.
There's an interesting note in that says in 2008, Iceland crowdsourced a new constitution. That's precisely what we can do. It's just that we can do it modular and distributable and sort of forkable, if you know speak GitHub language, right? Which means that the cat lover small group, which still exists inside the wider sort of WISE playground, they get to do their own way of governance, consonant and coherent with their values and their way of evolving as a human being. And over at a kind of completely different corner, there's a complete, kind of like cats and dogs, right? So there's a dog corner somewhere else, right? So they're doing a different thing in their group. And here's where we need the ongoing evolving knowledge repository, because then we allow the machine to 80 or 90%, depending on how sort of uncanny valley we are comfortable with. So to sort of help translate. Cat lovers speak cat language and dog lovers speak dog language, and never the twain shall meet. Well, in our thing, the idea sort of the pluralistic polytopolis is that they can actually meet, because what is groupthink, if you just see it as kind of one isolated group, but if you place another group right next to it, that becomes an adhesion possible and a rich source of rich context. And exactly to your point, Vinicius, it kind of like goes slightly beyond, because that's kind of very interesting social learning taking place, right? You can actually venture beyond your Dunbar number under 50. You can go beyond your groupthink, beyond the safety of your tribe, or whatever safety you have, right? Because that is kind of where all the magic resides, slightly outside the comfort zone. But if we don't have a digital format that sort of supports our ownership, stewardship of our own identity, this will become scary, right? We sort of become cat lovers for being primarily cat lovers. That's their thing, right? But if we then build a system that supports their sort of venturing beyond, right? And my statistics from the conversation community is that there's around 2 or 3% of all the members who are comfortable with sort of being uncomfortable. That's a very small number, right? But if we identify them and tokenize and reward and incentivize those people, they can form sort of like liaisons, human bridge builders, weavers in between, right? And some people know how to speak both cat and dog, right? So they can sort of communicate in both these two places. I had to learn kind of a couple of additional languages. I'm Swedish, right? So English is kind of just an acquired taste. English is kind of really a monster, right? Because it's kind of full of empire. So you need to be careful using English, right? And everyone who's kind of have English as a native language is probably mostly unaware how terrible it is, right? And the same goes with all other types of dialects, right? Because someone speaks corporate language, right? They're really gone, right? And some others speak kind of government English, and they're kind of weird in a completely different way, and so on and so forth. So we kind of, on the English-speaking web, we kind of separated by the same language. We just think that we understand each other, but we don't, right? But once we have put this down on ledgers, into governance protocols, and what have you, anything that sort of just serves and supports us, we can begin to see that, and this is one of the key points Vinicius opened with, systems are ways to control things, right? So this means that, and sorry to say those for all you still love systems, right? Yeah, we can have systems when that's the proper tool and approach. But we should never sort of allow ourselves to sort of be enslaved by systems, because systems do one thing better than most everything else, but systems does. They reproduce themselves, which means that our autopoietic sovereign identity should always trump the system. The system should serve us rather than us serving them. And this is tricky, right? Because if we are going to full autopoietic individual in the current society, we go curmudgeons, or solipsists, or narcissists, or something weird, right? Because we defend ourselves kind of against the onslaught of the Facebook stream, or the onslaught of media, or marketing, or whatnot, right? Everyone's trying to sell us things through the telephone, and we just fuck off, right? So the autopoietic thing is not just simple, right? It takes work, right, to become yourself. But if we are inside a platform, I was almost going to say system, but if we're inside a network, so the autopoietic identity we're kind of growing into, us becoming ourselves, if that's sort of supported and what we're doing is sort of sustainable, both for us and for those who we are interacting with, that is the kind of core definition, what I mean with win-win. And then if we hold that as an intention, because as Vinicius also said, the machine can only do so much, right? It can only take care of what we programmed it to take care of. So the intention is kind of the superset, right? But inside, whatever we can automate, and then we sort of design incentives, protocols, tokens. So if we do good stuff, will get rewarded, right? So the simple value proposition, what we have in mind here, is kind of learn how to play really well with others, earn crypto. So even though we're going to do something pretty advanced under the hood, the value proposition is simple. So everyone can sort of get this, right? And if we sort of have the incentives to learn how to play really well together with others, then that takes care of the trolls and the deadbeats, right, as well, right? For the simple reason that they really don't want to learn how to play really well together with others, right? So they will be disincentivized. So it kind of solves a lot of things, right? You just have a very simple value proposition, and then we build things in service to that. So, yeah.
So that's great, John, and thank you for scrolling through this. I'm just rereading this for the first time in like a year, and it's amazing how it holds up, because Daniel wrote this a couple of years ago, and it really addresses everything we've been discussing. And it you know, kind of all boils down to letting go of your ego and admitting that you're not perfect, and that joining a group is an opportunity to get better at things, and it's also an opportunity to pool values and resources. So this, you know, hierarchy between optimum, your reality, and suboptimal, the signaling can be private. If you don't want anybody to know that you're, you know, at what degree you're above or below optimum, you can keep that private. But depending on the nature of the group you join, you'll be making agreements that certain things are public, if that's the priority of the group. So you really have many different relationship kind of rings that come together. I'll let you guys.
In terms of ontologies, there's a shortcut here. So instead of reading up tons of ontologies, and you just wear it down, right? Go directly to Hopf fibration. It spells HOPF and then fibration, F-I-B-R, fibration. That's the thing, right? That's the structure we want to build. So, and if we get to that, and if we get people to homestead that digital structure, then this will work really well. But we're also kind of building into facilitation, curation, moderation, and governance and stuff, right? Because there needs to be slack, right? I, you, me, and everyone else, there needs to be allowance for having a bad day, right? So if I say fuck you to someone else on the platform, should I be thrown out immediately? Possibly not, right? Because I was having a bad day, right? But over time, and with good intentions and with good incentives, working in tandem, and that is actually also an ontology, or rather multi-ontology sense-making, if we sort of allow for this, all these different small groups doing their thing. The DAO thing, I think, and you could sort of speak more to that, John, how you can actually have one DAO, and then that can sort of spawn baby DAOs. That's kind of a weird example, but first thing that came to mind, right?
Well, it would be nice to hear Colin, Tina, Jan, and Marco. It would be nice. So, guys, come on.
Yeah.
Hello. You first, lady.
And looks like Shana joined us too. So yeah, I'm in the US and I've been in the conversation community for a while. My interests are kind of all over the place. I think I've commented on different things that John knows, you know, I'll be like, permaculture, or yes, this and that. My knowledge of DAOs and technical stuff is like that, you know, but I'm learning, and I'm a super curious person. I call myself a lifelong learner. So this is all fascinating to me. I also have an interest in conflict resolution. I'm a mediator, and so the parts of the Polytopolis talking about conflict, I perked up, because my belief is conflict's not a bad thing always. Not even, it's an interface for learning. It's like an opportunity, and getting through it. So I'm hearing the governance talk and all that is all different ways to, to plan for eventualities, but then life happens. So I'm in. Thank you. This is fascinating. I'm glad to be here.
Great to have you. Good to be here. And for others who chime in, you just kind of technical detail. You probably need to press the unmute thing if you want to chime in.
Sorry, I'm late. I thought the event said 10:30 Eastern. So my apologies. I wish I could scroll through all the slides.
It's okay, Chana. Welcome, Chana. Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, same here.
Well, Colleen, I think Colleen is with us since the beginning, so I think Colleen has a lot to say, and so is Marco.
It's a really good meeting. I find that a lot of things I've heard are coming out in a nice way in this meeting. It'll be a good one for others to watch. I've been kind of interested in a few different angles. I've been around the conversation community for a while looking for signs of intelligent conversation and what one would be, as far as different than some of the conversations that I have locally. Living in a small area, it's hard to find think tank type people who enjoy to philosophize and to think about a new world. So that was part of it at the beginning. That sucked me in, and then there's so many interesting people, and so wanting to build on my soft skills, I've started and an interest in the psychology end of things. I started to try to figure out, what would a way to have better coherence in a conversation, and John is all about that. So I've been following a lot of what John has to say about. It's interesting. It is a mind thing. It's a cognitive thing, and he goes to Facebook because that's where people think they are, and that says a lot. So if and on the technical end, which is what my profession is as a software developer, I realize there's so many people working on so many things. So what is it that people are working on, and what would fit for me? So I'm also mapping out a lot of different projects, and some of those maps are private and public. DigLife, I did some RChain mapping. John's conversation community is a little different because it's kind of more conversational, so it's not really project based. The project is kind of the thing itself, so you can just take part. And also there's another group I joined, Global Challenges Collaboration, I think it's called, and it was originally to find some solutions to some of the SDG goals, I believe, and how to form governance around. So basically the same game all over town. How do we work better together? How do we collaborate? How do we do it efficiently? And so it keeps coming back that the roadblock is in my mind is the thing before you get to the solution. So if we have a solution, that would be nice, but how do we get people to agree that this is better? So in that realm of psychology, people adapters, accommodation is a better word. People adapter is a very cold word, but accommodators. And some things may or may not, like the dog and cat analogy. Like if you can speak both dog and cat, you're very special. But maybe some people don't, and why is that? And is it because of the way they've been brought up till they're 5 years old and then they're kind of set in their ways? What makes an open-minded person willing to try new things? And people are invested, and of course national borders, and so it's wicked problems turned into super wicked problems with the impending climate crisis, and so it's really nice to see that there's people working on these things and actually trying. What I see missing is the incentives, which is, the shapely value and things like this are there. I worked a few years ago on a WeShare project where people could vote themselves. I like what this person did. So when the amount comes into, say, a grant or a sponsor, you could divvy up the rewards if you had rewards for the volunteering. But it does seem to be very lethargic in that the new world way of thinking. I shouldn't say new world, it makes it sound, but I'm a type of person that likes to have a little bit of the old and a little bit of the new, because I don't think we have to rewrite everything. So where you draw that line, and it comes down to incentive and who's the authority and why are they the authority, and how confident are you that that's the best thing to do. And so regular people don't get in on that conversation for the most part. And so I think it is more logical to think in smaller groups of, well-coordinated, well-aligned messages of, this is something I want to do. This is something that needs to be done. How can I help do this? And how can I, have a future for me and my family doing this kind of a thing without, of course there's risks. I think, Johnny was mentioning that the payback we get at this point may not be worth the effort, but I think it's people who have a drive to work in this area, will, I think, gravitate to this kind of stuff. So I do think I'm at the point where I have to work a little smarter. So I really am not trying to dig in and roll my sleeves up as much as find the right fit and what's going on. So I guess that's quite a roundabout description of where I'm coming from, but yeah, it's very much trying to watching it build and finding out, where can I help out, and like you said, Holochain seems very interesting with its agent-centric type of networking, which is local to the group and can extend to a certain, but it doesn't have to be true everywhere. So it's a whole new way of looking at this agreement and whose credibility. So that seems to have some really good possibilities. I'm glad to hear Johnny has a few of those boxes. I'd like to get a couple boxes myself. But yeah, I think in fear of rambling on,
No, this is not rambling at all. On the contrary, and I will curate and point people to some of your diagrams, because you put in some in the conversation community, Colin, some time ago, and I can just, because this is a nice thing with Facebook, right? In the conversation community, if I just add kind of like a bump comment to one of those where Colin's diagrams appear, it sort of rises to the top, right? So there's obviously, we can use existing tech and code to decent ends, but also to address sort of the deeper underlying issue, right? Kind of, if I join this Wise Playground thing, will this help support my kids and put food on the table? Because that's the only question that matters, really. And this is one of the core reasons why 300,000 people. Now, if you go buy a laptop, you'll shell out like $1,000, right? Thereabouts, right? Now, the next time, let's say we get to 300,000 people, and we go to a laptop outlet, right? We say, okay, we want to buy 300,000 laptops, right? Can you imagine the price we'll get, right? That sales guy, he will marry us and carry our children, right?
That's an amazing point, and I didn't even think about that until you just said it. Like, part of my earliest work in this space was working with Bill McKibben and Billy Parrish back in like 2003 to start what eventually became 350.org and the Energy Action Coalition. And both of those groups started with just 2,000 college students. And with the Energy Action Coalition, and it was actually called the Campus Climate Challenge, we organized about 200 universities and took their collective purchasing power and set to spreadsheeting out the operational flow of their like food deliveries and the types of chemicals that they were buying. And we did like a thorough analysis of the impact of these colleges on the environment. We found like better trucking routes where their food delivery company could pick up organic tomatoes from a local farmer instead of buying the ones from Mexico. And if each college tried to negotiate individually, it never would have worked. But we managed to negotiate collectively and saved, millions of dollars and huge amount of environmental impact across that group. And we did it with old-fashioned spreadsheets and the telephone and some emails. So your point, just reminds me that that's another really powerful part, is that we have a collective purchasing power as a group that can align
and also weaving in Tina's point about mediation and how important it is, and how important it is with these seemingly weird stuff like game theory and Shapley values and ontologies and automatic computing of these things, right? This becomes much easier to see. If we get to 300,000 people, then there's a couple of billion on the table. I'm kidding you not. Right? If we then would say, here's a couple of billion on the table, help yourselves, sort things out, you know what's going to happen, right? Someone like Colin Kilburn, he will get absolutely zipped, right? Because he's nice, right? And I'm kind of a loudmouth. I will get my fair share. I will see to that, right? And I will feel sorry for a couple of seconds for poor Colin, who doesn't get anything, right? Now we just go on and spend it. This is kind of, I'm not saying this is me and Colin, I'm just using us as examples, right? You know that, right? But if we have kind of a machine, right? We can program that machine to not be greedy. We can program that machine to be win-win-win, right? And here's a simple way we can program it, right? The machine will take care of that from everyone according to ability. You just do your best, right? Whatever it is, right? And then to everyone according to need. This is kind of an old community effort, right? But the difference here is that we combine it with network scale. This will start, the currency will start to work already a couple of thousand people. But it's going to sort of be, we'll be spread a bit thin, right? That's kind of the need for the scaling thing. At 300,000 people, this will just work like a charm. So it's the same thing like carpooling or living in a commune, right? I mean, it's just scaling advantages, right? It's just that the only way we could do it before was inside old existing structures, institutions, nation states, governments, right? Those got gamed. I just got lucky. I was born in Sweden, so not all our politicians are crooks, right? There's some good ones left, right? Which means that Sweden is kind of works pretty okay still, right, for a while, right? I mean, I don't want to go into politics, but you can just imagine for yourself what happens in different countries, right? With people that used to be kind of decent people, as kids at least, right? And now they turn into politicians and something happened, right? Because they got access to power and a couple of billion, so what did they do, right? Well, they succumb to temptation, right? Like all of us, right? So here's a thing that actually needs to be done. So let's say you have, like, I'm back to one of the things that Vinicius opened with, which I really liked, right? We did a couple of thousand years with tribes, right? Which meant that you took care of the tribe and then you killed everyone else, right? As soon as they got near, right? Very old, very working system that's kind of not really great, right? Just killing someone because they're not carrying the spear colored in the way you do in your village is kind of not really cool, right? And then we got from tribes, we got to institutions. I mean, still, nation states have monopoly in violence. That tells you something what nation states as institutions are, right? And then we got markets, which in my view is better than institutions. But you know what happened with markets, right? We have GAFA, right? Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, right? They took it all, right? All the billions are on the table. That's theirs, right? Did we get any? No, right? And then we have networks, the fourth thing. And we've just begun to use networks. And I can sort of tell this with precision, right? Go add a considerate comment on someone else's post inside the conversation community. You just do that and see how alien that is, right? Because you don't know the other guy, right? Try to pretend that there's another human being in there, and you can actually add a considerate comment on that other member's post. It's difficult, right? Because networks are really new, right? I can promise you that other person, because I basically checked through all the 4,100 people, they won't kill you for doing that. Can almost guarantee it, right? But they will also feel weird, right? Because who the F are you, right? So we don't. We stay inside obediently and kind of like 150 or 50, whatever Dunbar circle of friends you've got, right? And then we do kind of like the Facebook charade, right? We do cat gifs, right? We send it out, right? Look at me, I'm harmless because I'm doing cat gifs, right? Or the a-holes do, look at me, selfie, because I'm me, look at me, right? That's almost all we do in Facebook, which is ridiculous. Stop doing that. Honestly, I'm not kidding. Stop effing doing that. Because it keeps you from connecting with other people in a meaningful way. It's like playing theater, right? And everyone knows it's not for real. Really. If you send kind of a couple of thousand cat gifs out, it's like saying hello, right? That's fine the first time. And then saying hello again, and then people are going, okay, yeah, but she said hello the first time, so I got it, right? And then say hello a couple of hundred times more, and now it's really weird, right? And what's even weirder than in Facebook, that's okay, right? And for me, doing anthropology and semiotics and things, when I got into Facebook in 2015, I was just thinking, what the F is wrong with people? What are they doing? Right? Cat gifs, and cat gifs. Seriously, what's wrong with us, right? Doing that? That's why I needed to hack the conversation meet, because I wanted to have kind of like a place where it's not just that. Right? So, moment of truth. In the next platform, we're going to sort of earn a little kaching, a little crypto, right? A little token. Whenever we put something really substantial in, something unique that just we can do. I mean, Tina will go in, add stuff that helps mediate something, and she will earn tokens for it because she did a good thing, right? Colin will add some diagrams, and he will earn crypto for it because it's a good thing, right? So these things happen, right? We just need to incentivize them. And if we click the like button, if we have one of those, that will be an investment. Now you need to give away some of your hard-earned tokens in crypto whenever you click the like button. So it'll be a cost. Or you could see it as an investment in someone else because you actually care for that other person. So now you actually have, just by adding stuff and clicking on the like button or whatever we end up calling it, you have an economy. And to skip forward to the conclusion, you could call it like insight markets, which could be local, another one of Manisha's brilliant points in the opening, or global, if sort of global your thing, if you want to weave in between all across the planet, right? Or even rarer, but that's also important, global. You can connect all the way to Colin Kilburn's local community and all the way up to the planet and back and forth. So all those three things need to happen. But don't put yourself down just because you're doing local, because that's as important as all the other kind of perspectives and dimensions. There will be room for everyone, right? This is why I say to people, if they're kind of just, oh, John, just shut up and give me kind of the simple stuff, right? Then I just tell them, there'll be room for your stuff. That's the old George Carlin skit. If you haven't seen it, you should have to go see that, right? Because George Carlin tells this way better than I can, right? And more funny. So that's a simple thing, right? That's a bottom line. There'll be room for your stuff. And you will earn more tokens, more crypto, the more you go outside the comfort zone and just share whatever unique thing is yours to share. That's the thing, right? That's the whole thing. We're going to build a whole insight market on that. And it'll work if you do that. So, sorry, I mean, I got a bit ranty, but I kind of happen to care about these things, right? It just kind of, it still bugs me that people are doing these things, right? And the only one who gets it is this one guy in America, right? And he actually calls us dumb fucks, right? For helping him, right? I mean, it's kind of bothers me, right? That's goes on. And it's been going on for 12 years, right? And you know the learning curve of those 12 years? We started doing this in 2007. Now, 12 years later, we're doing the exact same thing. Learning curve, that's flat, right? That's meant to wake you up, if you didn't know why I shared that.
I think that that's true, because it takes a certain amount of trust and risk to put yourself out there into a forum where you don't really have the boundaries defined, or the incentives. And 99% of the time when we're doing that, we are out playing some kind of a role. Even if we're at work, we're playing some kind of a role for the boss, because he doesn't want to know what we really think. He wants to know.
That's an invaluable nuance, Colin, because none of that I would said about the catechism and stuff. None of that is meant for you to sort of hunker down in shame, right? It's important that you realize that you got played. The Facebook designers, they are really clever. They know about dopamine. They know about clicking things. They know about sort of creating habits and addiction, right? They know these things. They're really, really good at what they do. Never diss yourself because you got played. Mark,
I think the new
fondled your crown jewels for 12 years. I mean, not the ladies, because you don't have crown jewels, but the men understand what that is, right? And you got played for 12 years, and you're still being played, and you should stop being played, right? And this is kind of where, but here's the thing, if we are just angry with Facebook, that's not the generative place to be, right? So you need to just embrace that, own it, okay, be angry for a while, and then you need to stop being angry and do something else. And Tina knows that, right? The kind of the mediation thing. This is a good conflict to have. Do a voodoo doll or Mark Zuckerberg and stick pins and needles into it if you have to, but then you stop doing that and you move on, right?
Yeah, I think the nuance I was looking at more to the fact is that's to be expected. You know, the entertainment world, and online is partially an entertainment world. Cats are entertainment. People entertain. What I'm saying is, if you want to have meaningful connection, and appear as yourself, no matter where you are, you know, Zoom, a chat, you know, phone call, you actually have to have that space of identity, which we're getting to, where this is me, and I can let you have this amount, and I have, you know, I can push my consent to have my box in this video turn to snow. You know, is that possible? I don't know if that's the right way to go, but if I felt I had control to edit this or have some discernment put in, or at the very beginning of this video, I could say, well, I said 3 or 4 things that I don't believe anymore. So when you watch this, please look at the little correction button as I say these things to go see what I mean now. Because we have no control over, you know, and we're kind of, well, vulnerability. How do we learn the emotional intelligence and skills through practice to deal with this little steps of vulnerability, and in areas that we trust is where that's going to happen, not in areas where we don't trust. So otherwise, I'll just give you a cat GIF again, and you know, another one, and just to say I'm still here, I'm still alive, and I'm tuning to channel 7. Maybe Seinfeld's on. You know, it's not meaningful. So I think with levels of privacy, levels of identity, levels of annotation, editing, owning your narrative, and being able to be given a proper springboard to change, as opposed to being, you know, I like the saying that the past is for guideposts, not for hitching posts. So a lot of people will hitch you to the past, and it's very risky to be known as a soundbite. So I've learned a lot of things playing in this space of online, and what I have control of, what triggers me, what doesn't trigger me, what am I actually trying to achieve, you know, what did I think this was going to be, what has it turned out to be, you know. So where things started out in some conversations to be trying to solve global challenges, it ended up being more of a support group, and you know, some people there are still hoping to reach out around the world to more than just the typical people who show up at more diverse cultures and more diverse problems. So to try to know what anybody wants in anyone's space is hard if you can't somehow build up controllable but changeable and diverse boundaries. You know, I guess somebody has to draw a map and say, this is this country, and we're going to pay for healthcare here, and these people, you know, based on the resources. You see a changing world, like I think Mr. VR, I don't know your name, Vicari, what's your name again?
Yeah, that people call me VR or Vinicius.
Yeah.
I mean, those are all brilliant questions, Colin, and to the point. The thing is, we can build things that help us resolve these things. And also one of those initial Vinicius things, thankfully I jotted down the notes, right? Gathered together through empathy. Mm-hmm. Which means that when I hear these things, and we're all different, that's a source of value, right? But if I wouldn't have empathy, and I sort of trained myself, because that was the only way I could run the conversation with you, right? Because personally, there's hundreds and hundreds of people there that I personally don't like. It's just a fact of life, but there's 4,100 people. And I have my days that I just want to sell you all off to medical science and be done with, right? Because it's way too much people, right? And everyone is kind of rightfully concerned that what they're doing when they're interacting with me is important, right? But I'm sort of the monk in the middle of the storm, right? I have 4,000 other people to attend to, right? So this is difficult, right? Going beyond 150, the Dunbar thing is hard, right? So these things we won't resolve shortly, right? And these things are also something that we need to address. Thankfully, there's a guy called Maslow, sort of figured out kind of a couple of levels, right? So if we help each other doing kind of at least a couple of those levels, we'll be fine, right? Because this will not sort of solve everything. No, right? But it will solve some of the things we did wrong, right? So again, kind of we sort of gathered to the tune of 1 billion people because we gathered together through empathy, right? Curiosity, empathy, right? Hey, there's other people there. That's why I joined Facebook, right? So we did, right? And it ended up not great, right? Did we get anything out of it? No. That's kind of a shitty deal, right? So then the next thing we're joining, if this is our thing, right, you join, right? We'll have to make sure that you get something better out of the deal. Right? And again, deal is kind of not the great word because it's an old English word, right? Kind of like power and deals and transactions, you know, right? But this is something we need to sort of also have because otherwise people won't understand any of this, right? There's easily Holochain, Artchain, DAO, Stack, Stellar, IOTA, and us and others, right? All brilliant projects, right? And you could go to any one of those new blockchain outfits and see, do you understand anything of what they're trying to tell you? No. So the language challenge is real, right? And then you have all the cultures, right? There's probably Brazilian blockchain companies.
Oh, I think that
John... they have websites in Portuguese or Brazilian. So again and again, back to the whole language thing. So I'll stop there. There's more about Vinicius opening, but you just probably need to sort of go watch it again, the opening, right? Because the fluid and organic thing is really important. That once you sort of put your thing in, you could put a different thing. Your identity can evolve, right? Try to sort of replicate, and we will have to have posts and comments and like buttons or something similar, because otherwise people will just go berserk, right? They will go bananas, because where's my like button, right? But over time, we will sort of grow and evolve beyond it, right? Because your identity things. Okay, I'll stop there, guaranteed. Thanks.
Well, John, there's something that for me, it's a reality. I understand that we are only tipping the surface of a new type of intelligence. See, intelligence that is driven by intuition and by empathy, yeah. and intelligence that are shaping new social worlds. So in my view, the social worlds, it's already happening. They're not going to happen. They're already happening. See, in all this polarization that we are living, some are artificial, some are algorithm-based, but driven, but some are really natural in a social social, on a social scale. You see, it's a very human thing to be strangers with each other, and this type of strangeness I see as I see it as a resource. I see it as a resource to build this new type of intelligence. You see, this intelligence that we can think the world without boundaries. We can think a civilization without nation states, without big organizations, big corporations. We really can make this happen in between us. You see, so in this sense, the type of efforts that I'm weaving with the E2 this global experimental station for open science and social P2P technologies, is to redefine infrastructures, to conceptualize new superstructures, and for that in this way, all the people that are involved in this transitioning paths, you see, is willing to accommodate, is willing to be together in various ways, in various forms. So, and we're doing this without technology. We're doing this through empathy. We're doing this through interactivity, through forms of conviviality. So this technology thing, blockchain, holochain, DAO, is something that's going to happen too. By the way, E2 is going to have a social platform too, and social media too. And this social media is beginning to happen in a very fluid and organic way. You see, there's no rewards. The people just want to see this happening. They're really interested to see a type of social media that it's not gaining life through rewards or through repetition, through this conventional and organized ways doing things. See, through a startup and a control command and things like that. So that's really happening. And I'm very pleased to see that myself and another hundreds, because when we speak about this E2 thing, this organic, this meta-organic interactive organism, we have 100 people, hundreds of people interacting here in Brazil and off Brazil. So there's a lot of people that really wants to do this. And the thing about it, to end this little insert that I'm making, is that there's no end goal. We're having pleasure in doing it through the process, through the living in it, in all stances, in all ways, in all manners. So it's very thrilling. And most interesting is that everyone is doing in its own time, its own way. So it doesn't have a set of rules of common consensus. It's a non-consensual way to do things. So that's a type of effort, that's a type of exploration that hundreds of people here in Brazil and out of Brazil are doing right now. So that's very interesting, because and something that is, I think that it's a type of more organic reflection of the things that you, Johnny, and all of us, because we're all in this thing, are doing with the Wise Playgrounds efforts, you see. So I'm very pleased, man. I'm really very pleased.
I'm really happy that you said all that, because it kind of feels to almost all the people I talk with these days that we're kind of tapping into something that wants to happen and needs to happen. So this is kind of, I mean, this is literally the first time I'm seeing you and meeting with you in this Zoom, right? Many of you I would probably never meet face to face, right? And still we can get this Zoom thing here to work, right? I can clue in on a thing I do. I imagine that you're sitting around here, around my table, right? Because then you turn a bit more alive, as if you're human, right? I'm hoping you are, and you're not sort of a clever VR thing sort of designed by NSA or something, right? I really hope you are people, right? But and here's the thing, I mean, if we can extend empathy all across the planet, right? Imagine what we can do then if we're actually doing what we're doing now, right? It's just kind of on a bigger scale, because this is the disadvantage with the Zoom thing, right? Obviously we get the human touch because we can see each other and listen to each other, but kind of like 5 or 15 people, now of that is kind of a bit awkward with the Zoom thing, right? So we need other tools for doing like 300,000. That's kind of, for where I sit, that's kind of the whole why of blockchain, right? So we sort of do, as John has said, there's one thing he said is really important. How do we scale coordination? And if we do that, we can help each other. And I can sort of share some of my stuff, you can share some of your stuff, and it can sort of be distributed to wherever across this 300,000 network it's needed, right? There's something you can just do kind of 2 hours work and you get 1 month's pay, right? Because it's scaled out to distribute it where it's needed. So people kind of click on things because this was good stuff you did, right? You reached sort of 300,000 people. If it was a good idea and it was distributable. So, but that's a lot of ifs, right? So we need to actually build it, right? So that's kind of why also John is doing this thing in New York this summer, the ITP thing, New York University. So there's going to be sort of small projects there where we're going to sort of start building it, right? We're happening it, right? So, Vinicius, thanks, man, for having me. It was a pleasure. And don't be scared for when I go on my rants, right? I'm mostly harmless most of the time, right? Just kind of, I just happen to care about some of these things a lot, right? So, again, thanks. And I mean, obviously, any which kind of questions, we can sort of just dump them in the group chat or in the conversation community or other convenient places, right?
Well,
and if someone, practical things, if someone can just copy paste and keep the chat thing, right?
Well, to summarize this marvelous meeting, I would really like to hear Marco a little bit. I know that Marco has a lot to say. So Marco, if you, or Jan, even Jan, if you guys want to put a little bit of perspective to end up this in a beautiful way, please make yourself comfortable.
Oh, thank you, Vinicius. First of all, I need to say that I'm connecting from Bolivia. I'm Bolivian. And of course, it gives me a different perspective about everything because we have different necessities. We have different situation, economical situation and ecological situation and everything. So I start from there. And this was my starting point about the Fab Lab network. So as you know, Fab Labs start in very rich universities with a lot of resources available. So it was a dream to have all that wonderful machines. And then we think that we could do it. So I started Fab Lab Bolivia, but then I realized that we need to start from the situation, our current situation in Bolivia, in which there is different necessities, and then we start from, you know, tackling these needs, and this drives me to a different approach. So instead of the current mechanistics of, you know, having machines and think that that is progress, I realized that the products of the Fab Labs has a very short lifespan, a very short life cycle, and then it becomes trash, it becomes waste. So that is part of a big machinery that is, destroying the planet. So we don't want that. We need to start from scratch by redefining what is needed about production and how we could make different approach on producing, friendly with nature. So the first thing is decoding nature and an approach to biomimicry to understand nature. And it drives me to elaborate a concept about a green fab lab. And that is my work from 4 years ago. I started 4 years ago about this. So I understand that it is quite off topic what we are talking today, but it is the first time that I meet you guys. So I beg your pardon to introduce a different, things, but it is needed to present something that could refresh the talk of today, which is a very, very interesting talk. And I need to say that that possibility about the green communities, about green fab labs and startups, green startups, it was become our mission. And very, very fast it grows. Now we are, at 15 countries worldwide. And it is a project that is gaining traction. So in short, I'm going to share my screen to show you a little bit about our main idea, which is to build collectively an open source symbiotic economy. Okay, so what I found is that, let's say Europe, the most advanced ecological way to tackle climate crisis was, by practice circular economy, but there is no circular at all. If you think in that in terms of thermodynamics, it is totally a wrongful assumption. So maybe there is very important natural cycles that is close, and it is important to understand this and to use these patterns, natural patterns, in your production, in your way to produce things. But we think that it is become also a mainstream theory, and it is co-opted by the business as usual. The big companies that need some, a way to say, oh, we are doing great. We are, identify with the problems or ecological problems. So as part of all social responsibility, we are, using circular economy. But at some time, it becomes a way to more growth, because they optimize the process. Then if they are, producing 3 or 5 things, now they could be able to produce 7 or 10 things, because they are processing their waste and they are selling it. So it is a way of productivity, it's a way of optimizing the sources, it is a way for more growth, and grow it in a limit, in a planet that has limits. It is a nonsense right now at this point. So we think that we need a different approach. So we are building this open source symbiotic economy by receiving all the flows from collective intelligence in the same way that Linux did. Linux becomes the most important software, operational software in the world, and it was by open source. So the first word, open source, is very important. And the second is symbiosis, which is also very important, starting from Margulis and all a lot of researchers around the world. So we are trying to create this collectively, and we have a situation in which there is, for example, neo-Luddites in our network, people that, you know, reject the technology. They are, you know, they feel the technology as an oppressive situation in which they don't want to be at all. So they reject technology. They are quite, you know, naturalistic, and they want to go to a place in which they could do permaculture and be in a totally different situation in which they reconnect to the nature, and it is good. It is a very interesting approach, but at the same time we have very sophisticated thinkers and makers at our community, which they are thinking about, you know, exponential technologies. They are thinking about artificial intelligence and a lot of you know, high-tech technologies. So it is a matter of, it is a big challenge, you know, to create some kind of bridges between those people, to talk each other and to find a synthesis, because they have things that are important and things that needs to be dismissed. So because we are a grassroots organization, and all the people that goes to the Green Fab, they don't have enough resources or money to you know, buy a Fab Lab like $250,000, because we decide that the Green Fab needs to be inclusive and not an elite of exclusive people. So we are, you know, valuing all that permaculture practice, but at the same time, all the high-tech practice, like, you know, AI, for example. And because we don't have enough resources to have a land, for example, in which we could do a Green Fab Lab, most of the people at the Green Network doesn't have a land, for example, in that proportion. But they start from their own desk, they start from their connection and sharing information that it is needed to be curated in a way that, you know, could be useful for all the members and all the world. So we built a knowledge base which comprises now 100,000 records. It is a huge database because it is not, you know, something that just came in. It is a curated info. So we built that knowledge base, and now that we have this knowledge base, we decide to go a step further and to create an engine, which is an AI-powered learning platform, literature-based discovery. So it will create smart agents that goes to the internet and retrieves information. So they could give us optimized information about everything that is needed in order to create green village, green fab labs, or green companies, right? And that is a way for us to have updated information and optimized or inputs, no matter where we are, we could get the most, updated and optimized info. The second project is about Symbio BIM. BIM is like virtual information modeling. It is using virtual reality or augmented reality in order to design in a virtual reality environment, to design green, let's say a smart house or a greenhouse, and by reducing the carbon footprint doing this, we could design an entire village, ecological village, by using virtual reality, right? So you need to imagine that you enter a virtual space that is fed in real time, and all the information that you enter situated you in the desired location in which you want to build something. And once you finish that design, you are able to produce this, because it has a plugin that will enable CAD/CAM producing. Fab Labs has these big machines like CNC that allows you to create, for example, modular houses. So these both are the digital platform of the Green Fab Lab now, and it allows to give us information that improves the process of building prototypes or proof of concepts. And then a way to do that, here, as you can see, this beauty is in Cochabamba. We did this by approaching biomimicry, and it is a place in which we did our workshops. And then if we could be able to produce this, to build this, let's imagine what could be done by using advanced tools like artificial intelligence. So it will be an amazing future, and I believe that it will be a chance for collective creation of at least 10 or more Green Fab Labs, which is synced as a demo places. So you could go to that 10 Green Fab Labs in the world and say, oh, that is the way that we could create living spaces, totally different approach of what we think about habitat, because we are defining a way to create a habitat in a completely different approach. So that is what we are doing right now, and it is like 500 people currently members of the Green Fab community, and you are very welcome. Of course, underlying this, we are working with the idea of connect to the holochain network, and to have also the possibility of using some sort of other crypto coins or things like that. But first of all, we decide to create this socio-technical base and knowledge base. So after that, we have a roadmap in which there is almost like 50 projects that is very well defined, and it is synced as projects that could be deployed no matter where you are. It could be open source, and universal as possible. So that is the way that we are thinking to have big impact globally, because all we have, all we need is, you know, some 5 to 10 prototypes to allow us as a community to have self-sufficiency and a more resilient self-sufficiency.
Marco, fantastic, man. The last time we spoke, it wasn't so elaborated this way. Wow, I'm really thrilled. It's fantastic, man. Well, I want to invite you to make the next P2P talk. What do you think?
Oh yes, of course. I'm very happy of that.
Wow, it's absolutely fantastic, man. I'm really thrilled. It's fantastic because you see, folks, Marco is a node in the itsef net weaving, but we have some connection, not some intense interaction, but as Marco and its proposal of its Green Lab, we didn't have the time, really, Marco, to speak about it. And I'm really thrilled, man. This is fantastic in all sorts of ways. I don't know about you people, but it's fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your kind.
Big thanks for that, Marco. This was brilliant. There's a couple of people I should probably hook up you with, right? There's all kinds of synergies in terms of living labs, those other things. But Vinicius, you could sort us out, right, and connect us, and so we could sort of start sharing stuff, right, and network further.
Of course, of course. People, we're coming to an end here, and if it would be nice if everyone here feels to do it, and make some remark or your remarks. And we didn't really hear Jan. Jan is here with us, but we didn't hear Jan, and we really didn't hear Shanna too, and Tina. But let's go.
Yeah, so maybe I can say a few words. First of all, I really appreciated this conversation because there is so much into it, and I'm really bubbling with joy to see that I'm not alone trying to connect the dots and to coordinate on a wider scale. One thing I would like to say, there are quite a few things, but maybe I will not remember everything. The first thing was regarding VR's inquiry at what could connect us beyond the biases. And my point of view in that is that there are virtues that are universal. And for instance, how we connect to each other is through receptivity, it's through integrity, it's through benevolence. And these kind of virtues, you know, they don't really belong to any culture. They are just a common ground of being where we can really interact in a meaningful way. So I think that will be a way to go beyond these biases, is to investigate into these universal virtues. Another thing that I wanted to say is regarding the problem of interoperability between different devices, infrastructures, and systems. I don't have much knowledge about it, but what I can see is that, for what I understood, is that many devices get used not because of consensus, but because of massive adoption, like Facebook and so on. And also even, you know, internet, like the protocols that are used for internet or the Linux, all these things. I don't think there has been any democratic decision making worldwide to decide, okay, let's use this protocol or that protocol or this system or that system. It's just that there is adoption because there is some kind of ball rolling and there is some virtuous spiral that make it scale by itself through individual adoption. So I'm kind of thinking that probably also in the field of blockchain, holochain, and so on, it will happen in the same way, that there will be some system that somehow will make the hype and will be adopted more and more, will make the ball rolling by itself. Because I don't expect really it to happen in a different way. It's very unlikely. Before we set up some kind of worldwide coherence, democratic coherence, that we can really even consent on a global system to all agree upon. Of course, it's part of the journey to actually try to improve the civil tech and this kind of processes to have some participatory governance schemes and all kind of ways which are really also important. But I think more than that, scaling coordination is not through agreements, it's through stigmergy. It's through resonance, it's through adoption, it's through leaving traces that are meaningful to the others, and then they adjust individually to these traces we leave. So we should not underestimate the importance of these stigmergic coordinations. And I think we should even design to improve these coordination mechanisms so that they become truly regenerative, and that they support decentralization instead of supporting some positive feedback loop that brings some monopolistic phenomenon into decentralized networks, like we see with blockchain, like we see with the GAFAM on the internet, and so on. So that's really a few things. There is another thing regarding incentives. It's really common now to think that we should use incentives to also to differentiate between people and to give certain advantages, which makes sense to a point. But I think we should not forget that I think this kind of organic, decentralized systems, they work well through intrinsic motivations and not through extrinsic motivations. So if the people do the things because they get rewarded for it by any kind of points or whatever token, it becomes extrinsic motivation. And because of that, they try to hack the game. And they don't do it for the right motive anymore. They do it because there is some kind of a personal reward for it. And then we end up competing for the points. We end up competing for the tokens and so on. So what we need is to have the right incentive that fulfill the needs of the people, so that once these needs are fulfilled, the person can offer the best of himself or herself to the system or to the community or to the ecosystem. That's really my point, that we should really make sure that people get their needs fulfilled, but not that they get triggered by the incentive itself. Incentive should only be a means to an end, but not become the end itself. So that's another point. And another aspect, it's something I'm also thinking of, is instead of giving points or tokens for reputation, or alternatively to that, or maybe beside it or complementary to it, we could have simply different playgrounds, as you mentioned, John, where you can simply observe each other, see how each other is responding to triggers, to proposals, to invitations, and how we interact, how we speak, what kind of thought we bring into the picture. And into this kind of playgrounds, we develop an understanding of who we are. And by that, we can have different circles where we can simply, in a very decentralized way, co-opt people by saying, oh, well, I have seen that guy in that group, and I think that guy would fit well in the other group because he's proficient enough, or because he is a specialist of this, so it makes sense to bring these people together. So we can have a kind of decentralized mechanism so that we can play by co-opting people and inviting from some kind of more global space into more specific spaces based on how we perceived the relevance of bringing these people into the picture. Well, I have many more things to say, but that's already quite a lot of content.
Great. Well, Shana, Tina.
Unmute myself here. Hi, everybody. Blessed, John, to be in a room with you now, having been part of conversations for so long, listening in, as you've noticed. Very much tuning in and very much in awe of the work that you do every day and your orchestration and the environment that you've created it's been very inspiring and encouraging to me. And a place where I found in my own searching of, starting to ponder all these possibilities and feel like we're in a time and a place where we can actually do these wondrous things and manifest them in ways that we haven't been able to until now. Like you sit in all this possibility, just feeling the potential of it all, and yet feeling somewhat, I don't know, reserved or encumbered by clunky technologies that don't really allow you to move and flow as you'd like to, and to connect and have the conversations and trying to sync up these things. So I'm feeling that, frustration at the same time too, but blessed to be in the company of those who are feeling the fruitfulness of the energy that we put into it, and the potential and the good work ahead, I guess. So I'm reporting in or tuning in from the Pioneer Valley here in Western Massachusetts, and a place where I grew up and have made home again after being away for a while. And, my grandparents being Irish and Latvian immigrants born in Canada. So I'm feeling, lived in France for a year and got to travel. So feel very multiculturally in the love of it all, the relational richness of that kind of connectedness. So I guess just to put it out, I've just now started, I guess, to enter in more actively into the work that I feel called to do. And so with John, when you've posted about way stations, and I'm like, my heartbeat is to establish a globally connected way station here in Western Massachusetts, in the heart of the Pioneer Valley, a regenerative core for our region. I started to draft something years back, and I entitled it New, but in my spirit, I was sensing now everyone wins. So I very much resonate with the win, with the win message. We can now do this, now everyone wins. And most recently, I think I was sensing now everyone's welcome. And I'm a mom of 6 myself, ages, how old are they now? 14 to 25. So, I've had just seasons of weaving my own searchings and my own explorations, and very much a researcher and trying to cultivate or learning, I guess, in that context, things that I didn't set out to learn, but were needful, especially in these shifting contexts that we find ourselves in, the dynamics and the things the kids face and the things that we're facing. But at the same time, they've pulled me into things that I wouldn't have otherwise experienced too, just in terms of, I don't know, current ways of learning. I spent years exploring education and ended up homeschooling my kids. Or I don't even like that term though. I don't really like the term. I guess kind of jumping the rails a bit and going on a journey of exploration in learning, and in kind of coloring outside the lines. And so that has really yielded some things that, you just feel like it's the time now. It's the time for all. So many have been doing these explorations, and now to kind of the way to weave it back together and to bring fruitfulness to it all is kind of where I'm at. So I'm here kind of putting up the flag of Pioneer Valley representing and wanting to situate. Actually, there's a city here that I think was one of the first industrial planned cities in the United States, known as Holyoke, that I'm wanting to situate into, that has some old mill buildings, and it feels like a playful landscape right along the river, in which to begin to create a welcoming environment. And I think just listening in, some of what I've experienced, my own, I don't know, awkwardness in some cases with some kinds of social media, but I can do in person much more comfortably, is creating that sense of welcome you know, because I feel like even the institutional ways of education have left many people feeling like they're waiting for someone else to do something, or they're not worthy to enter into stepping into work in the community, or, you know, they're deferring to somebody else. And I think the validation of everybody's presence, you know, in the way that's why I watched John and you know, just ways of creating that sense of openness and welcome, that tears down those walls that divide, or that are perceived to divide, is, I think, some of what is on my heart. To how would you engage a whole region? So if we have a region of 500,000 people, and it's really needful for everybody to kind of enter into these new spaces, these new explorations, you know, how would you do that in a way that proved unifying and that was really building community, and challenging a lot of the the ways the dynamics fuel things that aren't so lovely sometimes online, or they tend to want to call out the worst. You know, how do we call out the best and invite the best? Like many of the comments that you've made I just so resonate with. So yeah, and I'm also, you know, one other piece for me in terms of global challenges is I started to draft some work around, proposed work around oral health care. And I guess as I started to kind of ponder it and see the interconnectedness, my search has been, how do you find the people who can kind of come into it with the kind of disposition of seeing the complexity and the interrelationship and all the hidden things that need to be acknowledged to even enter into this work rightly, and use the technologies that we have available to us in the way that would be appropriate. You know, how do we even enter into this kind of work? And so that's, for me, it's been a bit of a kind of draft some things and I kind of go in and out of them, but then I'm also just kind of scanning for who's ready to kind of just even to sit with it and to get a sense for how to begin to work with it. How do you gather the right kind of information and know how to enter in and to disentangle it and to recraft it, to reconstitute it in a way that will get these exponential returns or benefits or outcomes, but not like that. Like, it's almost like hard to find the words sometimes, which is why I go in and I write a little bit and I struggle to find the words that represent, which is why I hear so much of what John shares in the group, the words that he finds and these nuances that I feel like are so important right now. So anyway, some of what I'm
big thanks, Anna. I mean, the thing is, if this goes to 300,000, you'll be 10 times better to welcome people than I will be. Because I'm a scary guy, right? That's the truth of it, right? I am, right? I have read 1,000 times more books than most everyone else. I can think 10 times quicker than most everyone else. That's a scary thing, right, for most people. I can promise you, I'm not scary, really. But that's how it can sometimes come across, right?
Yeah.
I've been told to shut up in private Facebook chat more times than I can remember by hundreds and hundreds of people who are intimidated. Right? So it's really true, right? But the thing I sort of learned from interacting with you and with Tina and with Vinicius and with loads of other people is that it's okay, right? If you sort of forget everything else I've said today, okay, it's okay. We can do this together in a way that combines all these sort of brilliant insights. I mean, John, I could sort of return back to you as well, right? The different playgrounds is vital, right? And then we can add some clever stuff about how you can triangulate based on both circles of interest, and also on actual people that we trust, right? So we can triangulate our download further from 150 to 500 to 5,000 and so on, right? And then the machine can also ping us, right? So to address back to Shana, if she wants to do the oral healthcare thing in the 300,000 person strong group, there will definitely be 5 others who can help us to do that. And quickly she's up and running and doing her thing, right? And same with everyone else's favorite thing, and you can just do that. The thing is that large companies, inside really large multinational companies, they're already doing these things. So it's kind of existing technology, kind of like work distribution, right? Project management, sometimes it's called, right? And distributed and virtual and long distance team. It's done, right? It's just done. But the organizing metaphors are still sort of stuck in some kind of industrial paradigm. So suddenly this kind of taken for granted that, yeah, the CEO is going to get all the money, right? And the board and the owners, right? But what if we own the stuff, right? Because we do, right? And the final clincher here is that knowledge is abundant, right? If Shana shares her knowledge, someone else gets to benefit from her knowledge because it's unique to her, right? No one else knows the things Shana does better than Shana does, right? That's just a simple truth. And she gives it away, gets rewarded for it. She still gets to keep the knowledge, right? That's magic. She still gets to keep it, right? And she can share it again and again and again and again. And then through networking, hopefully if someone else knows the thing or two that Shana doesn't know, right? And she gets to learn from that and she gets even better, right? At doing things. And this is not just book learning, right? This is action learning. This is knowing how to network. This is getting the Fab Lab up and running and figuring out a way to do these projects in a way that works, right? At sort of sufficient scale. So, and I mean, Shana is kind of the epitome of everything I hoped for when I started the Conscious Community, that I could reach across the people not like me, right? That's all still a challenge, right? And Jan, wonderful stuff you shared. I haven't sort of got time to get into it, but we should probably have a separate Zoom just to go through all the scale and coordination through stigmata. Thank God I did notes, right, for this one, right? But this is just invaluable, right? Because that's the thing, right? It's just that we don't know how to do it exactly yet, right? Neither the human part or the machine part and the intersection, right? But I can promise you that me, David Miller, and John Dubowski, we are working on something similar, and we'd be happy to have you on board and helping us figure out some of these things, right? So it's because it's really important. The way to sort of figure out our paths, instead of someone telling you that you should go that path, right? That's horrible, right? But how do you do that? How do you find the desired paths? How do you find the shortcuts? How do you find the others, right? I asked Seb Paquet, I'm closing with this one. Seb Paquet is a brilliant guy. He lives in Canada, I think. He's working on AI. Really clever guy, really nice guy. And I said to him when I started in 2015, Seb, can you just clue me in on why are we doing this? Facebook seems like a waste of time, right? No, I said, it's one thing that's really good. Through this, you can find the others. And I got it immediately. And that's kind of what I did, right? I sort of gathered 4,100 of the brightest, bestest, humanist humans, right? And those are in the conversation community. I didn't find everyone, but I could find quite a lot of you, right? So, and it works, right? I have the data to prove that it works. And that's a different thing than just sort of going on the wing in a prayer, right? Sort of, this is very Swedish. Everyone else is kind of doing it in the wing of prayer, and we Swedish guys, we do it based on data, right? Yeah, but it's still human, right? It's still us. Sorry, I was almost on a rant there, but really thankful for these things. And I will promise to get back to you in whatever ways we can figure out in terms of time and so on. Time is obviously the challenge for me, right? Because it's 4,000 people, right? It's kind of just, yeah. But that's the conversation community. Ping there, whatever it is, just share whatever stuff, right? Or ping me on private Facebook chat or the group chat or whatever, right? And again, Vinicius, this was just a brilliant meeting. And it was your big heart that sort of made this happen. So big thanks for that. Probably missed half of what I'm going to say, but that doesn't matter. If there's something you come up 2 days from now, just ping me. I don't know we'll get to it. Yeah. And this is what I learned from Jerry Mikulski, right? Because he was always doing these things and all kinds of and yeah, and we did Zooms, right, a couple of years ago, and I said, John, Jerry, what's this, right? Because it meant something, right? All the things he did, right? Because it was quick, right? When you did many, right? No, it doesn't mean anything. It's just mad waves, right? And from then on, from Jerry Michalski, I'm always closing with sort of, because it means whatever you want it to mean, right? It's not prescribed, right? It's just mad waves.
So, well, John, we have Stacy here, but Stacy, we are already wrapping it up here, and I know, but we will have more P2P talks, and of course, with John, with Johnny, with Chana, Tina, we're gonna have with everyone.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I want to invite you guys every Tuesday, every monthly initial Tuesday of every month, first Tuesday of every month. It has a global encounter, global meeting called Global Realities. And comes people all over the place, from Italy, from South America, Central America, from Asia, and our people that are already imagining global realities. Okay, so mostly we make the thing this way. People speaks in their natural language, their orange language, and someone translates. So it has one or two first people that speaks their projects, their explorations they're doing, and this global reality thing that we're making happen. And you are invited. It's going to be a Zoom meeting too, and through this itsef effort. I know that I'm saying I'm not saying Stacy doesn't know what it means itsef, but after I can speak with you, Stacy, to know what means itsef, okay? And in that sense, feel invited. And the next P2P talk we're gonna make with Marco Zubieta. Zubieta, that's still with us here from Green Fab Lab. It's fantastic work they're doing there in Bolivia. And of course, in a global, in a geolocalization way, it's gonna be fantastic to see this work being appropriated, being reproduced, being evolved in many other global realities across the planets. So it's going to be our next P2P talk with Green Fab Lab here, Mr. Marco Zubieta. Well, and really to close this up, I want to hear Tina. And yes, Tina, because I think that you as someone that mediates things, I think that you're going to have the best way to wrap this up. So come on, let's go.
Well, thanks, Benicius, for your faith in that. I'm just like so much gratitude that I joined today. And I knew back in February there were some calls, and for some reason, whether it's time or whatever, I didn't join those. But this is like such of a integration of a lot of cool stuff. First of all, John in person is not as scary as I think he is. I don't think, because I'm intimidated. I go to the conversation community, I'm like, what is all this philosophy and ontology and this? But I think, as Shauna said, that some of the words and some of the semiosis and these concepts make sense to me. And so the people that tell him to shut up on private message, I advise them to scroll and roll, or take what you need and leave the rest, that kind of thing. Like, what in the conversation hits you, and the rest, do let it go. So that's one thing. The other is Marcos's presentation with Green Fab Lab. I was like, I spoke before about not really being technically inclined, and my idea of AI is robots that have no emotion, and they're going to take over the world. Or I mean, I guess I've watched too much science fiction or something. But I mean, you'll hear mainstream people expressing that. Like, what are we going to do with these machines? And so I have so much hope now, and my mind is blown at the possibilities of this. Is it's a way of the people, and I love how Jan pointed out, people with the empathy, people with the virtues that motivate us all, the benevolence, are designing or contributing to these machines, so they can't help but do some things that people alone couldn't do, you know. So it's a lot of hope and possibilities just from hearing everybody speak. And another interest of mine is something called nonviolent communication, which people might have heard of. Marshall Rosenberg's a consciousness of everyone's has the same human needs. So I've heard that theme in a lot of what people are talking about, and the idea of the incentives being not the point, but the human needs being met. And so I can share more of that in the Wise Playground or in conversation community. Also education, and mother of 3 grown and gone kids, super interested in education. So hearing Shauna speak was, loved hearing that, because after all, the next generations are the future. So that's about it. And I loved hearing, and I learned a new word, global, which I love. So huge gratitude to all of you guys. Thank you.
Well, I think that we only have to do this now, and
Yeah.
we are okay. Bye-bye, people. See you around.
See you around.
Okay, John. Fantastic, John. Great
Thanks,
kiss.
everyone.
Okay.